joining me today for our workshop on strategic marketing on a shoestring budget. My name is Kristy. I'm a presenter and an advisor for Business Station as part of the Commonwealth Government's Digital Solutions Program. Today, we're going to be going through a range of things from both a strategy perspective and then some more practical marketing sort of tactics that you might like to implement in your business. I do encourage questions, so if you have any questions or would like to ask me anything at any time, please use the Q&A or the chat functionality on Zoom to do so. I'll also have some time at the end of the session for you to ask questions as well. So my background is marketing, specifically digital or mainly a digital focus, but I really do love the strategy side of things with anything marketing related. And I do truly believe that you can market better and more cost effectively the more strategic you are. So the first part of what we're going to go through is all about strategy. Then we're going to get into some of the tactics, some other things, or a bit of an overview of how it might flow today. We'll talk about the the components, in developing your marketing strategy and how your strategy will have those financial benefits that I mentioned. We'll identify some low-cost marketing tactics that you might be able to implement, but keep in mind that there is further learning available on each of these topics through our range of webinars and workshops, or you can seek out more information from a digital advisor on these topics. Because we've only got an hour today, so it's a limited time, we won't go into depth on the tactics, but I'll let you know as we go where there is a specific workshop or more information available. We'll also look at the importance of measuring and controlling your marketing activities to make sure that you're producing sales, which is ultimately what you will be chasing from any marketing that you implement. And we'll also sort of make sure that you're spending your money as effectively as possible. Now, before we get into that, just to, a quick definition of marketing. What is it? Marketing, to me, is anticipating the needs and wants of your customers, which should be targeted customers, and then managing that process through which the needs and wants are satisfied. But in doing so, you really have to make sure that you are doing it profitably. That keyword sits around sort of targeted. You have to know exactly who you're selling to so that you can know what their specific needs and wants are, and therefore you can provide them exactly what they want and provide it where and how they want it. Now, a key element of today's webinar is the theory that successful marketing doesn't have to cost your small business significantly. So you absolutely need to know the results of what you're doing so that you can ensure that you're spending your money in the right areas. That's where strategic planning comes into it. A lot of small business owners that I've sort of come across or worked with create a business plan. Generally, you do that when you're starting up. But the day-to-day running of your business sort of takes place. A lot of time can go by before you refer back to that plan. Some businesses don't refer back to those plans at all. And a lot can happen in your business during that time. Your priorities might shift. You might introduce new products. You may have key staff that come or go. So a lot of different elements can really impact your business plan. Have a think for yourself. Do you have a business plan? When did you last actually look at that document? I believe that the best way that you can ensure that you're marketing effectively and reaching your goals is to go through that process of annual planning and reviewing things like your business plan. If you can take some time every year to measure your progress, assess the specific steps that you're going to take in the coming year to make sure that you stay on track to that plan. That'll then tie into your marketing strategy and being able to market in the most cost-effective way. So to define the strategic planning elements of your business, have a look at the pyramid that's on your screen. The marketing strategy has to align with your overall business plan and your goals. It then defines the marketing mix, which is essentially your price, your product, your promotion, and your place, or the distribution of your product or service. The marketing plan is simply the implementation of it all. So that's allocating marketing resources, implementing the actual marketing, and then budgeting in line with that as well. So that element of the marketing strategy, what is it? Well, it's really a selection of a course of action that involves specific customer groups, communication methods, distribution channels, and your pricing structures. So it's a combination of your target markets and marketing mixes. The advantages of a marketing strategy is that it really allows you to find and use what works, and then you can stay focused on that, as opposed to lots of opportunities come across your desk. Do you take, that avenue? Do you implement something here? Who are you speaking to? Who are your customers? What kind of products and services are they buying? So have a look at, have a think about that within your business. Do you have a business plan? If yes, when did you last review it? Do you have a marketing strategy? If yes, when did you last review that? For a lot of small businesses, development of a marketing strategy sounds like a hard task that may come with a bit of overhead. And a lot of advice that you might pay a marketing agency to give you will be that you need to input significant marketing dollars. But there are things that you can do yourself, and I don't believe that marketing has to be expensive if you're targeted. So strategic planning is a key element here. It is an extensive process. For me to develop a marketing strategy, it takes a number of weeks. You obtain information, you analyze that information, you go back and forth, and then ultimately you're developing a strategy around everything that you've learned. So some key strategic research areas include, and I'm going to sort of run through them. Some of them are pretty straightforward and you may have heard of them before. It's pretty basic sort of marketing. Others are a little bit more complex. So we're going to go into a bit more detail on those. But first of all, you've got a SWOT, a basic SWOT analysis, which are an assessment of your strengths and weaknesses, which are internal factors that can impact the business, and opportunities and threats, which are external factors that have the ability to impact your business. You've then got a PEST analysis, which is your political, your economic, your social and technological factors. Or some businesses look at a PESTLE analysis, which also includes environmental and legal factors. PEST being the four key elements that I mentioned, that's kind of the most common, but you can obviously extend that if it's suitable to your business, depending on the size and nature of your business and the industry that you're working in. A competitor analysis is really important, and now I'd be looking at assessing your own business and what your products are, your services are, and what your strengths and weaknesses are in comparison to key competitors. So knowing who your competitors are, identifying them is one thing, and then assessing them is another. So a competitor analysis is really important. This is something, all of these areas, once you've developed your marketing strategy, you should review them annually, as I mentioned, but competitors in particular, because you might find that competitors join the mix, or there's some that go. So you always want to be reassessing what your competitors are doing. They might bring online more products or services that compete with you. So that continual assessment of your competitors is absolutely crucial, and really weighing up how your business is going against them. Now, that can be done a number of ways. You might look at doing that by way of desktop sort of research, having a look at websites, doing Google searches, that kind of thing. You may physically go and experience your products, your competitors' products or services, to get a feel for what their overall offering is like by way of customer service, as well as the physical offering. So there's a number of ways that you can do that, but actually documenting it in some kind of statement is really important. I just do a simple table where you've got some key factors of assessment, looking at your business, and then each of your competitors. A key thing here with competitors is to look at direct competitors, which are competitors that offer the same products and experiences or services, talking to the same customers, and then indirect competitors as well. Now, an example of this, an indirect competitor might be someone that doesn't offer the same products and services, but your customer isn't going to experience both your business and their business. They may make a choice. They may not, let's say they've got a limited time, or that, let's say in the hospitality example, your restaurant may be completely different to the one next door, but your customers aren't going to go to both. They're going to choose one or the other. So that could be more of an indirect competitor, or a direct competitor is someone that offers the exact same products or service to the same customers. Your sales analysis is really important. You have to analyze your own sales results year on year. So have a look at past data that you've got month on month. And really plan growth areas. So growth areas could include volume at existing times. You could be having a look at growing in different seasonality, in changing your products or services that you offer. So really planning out some growth areas. Now we'll talk about some profit enhancement areas soon as well. You need to really define your unique selling proposition. What is it that makes you truly unique, and what is it that you're pitching to clients? So your USP is really important. Once you know what your competitors are offering and that key value that they're communicating to customers, you can really find what it is about your business that makes you unique. You need to define your target market. Now, we will expand on target market because I think this is one of the most important elements of marketing strategically and doing so on a shoestring budget. Once you know exactly who you're talking to and have really determined that they are the people that will buy your products or service, it becomes a very simple task of just putting your product or service in front of them in terms of where they consume media or advertising. So getting that right means that you can really market the most cost-effective way possible. The next is looking at your marketing mix. So just really defining those 4 Ps, and I'll expand on that. Your finance analysis and your budgeting, thinking here, how do you budget for marketing? How much do you budget for marketing? Now, this is a question that I get regularly. People say to me, how much should I be spending on marketing? There is a benchmark, and research sort of shows that should be somewhere between 4 and 10% or the equivalent of your gross revenue that you spend on marketing. And it's said that 4% will maintain your market position, whereas creeping that up to the 10% will grow your market position. But you have to estimate the demand, and that will be based on your pricing and your promotional strategy as well. So obviously, I mean, in terms of a scientific sort of analysis, the more money you spend on advertising, providing you're advertising to the right people in the right place, that should equate to a growth in sales. So there has to be a bit of science behind that as well. With your financial analysis, in terms of setting your marketing budget, you'll have to think about what expenses might be associated with actually producing any advertising or website development, that kind of thing. You'll also have to determine your cash flows to know when you can actually afford to market or advertise. You also have to consider some critical assumptions. So what are those critical assumptions of your financial analysis? And what could be the impacts in any changes in those assumptions? So should anything change, it could be, seasonality could change. There could be things beyond your control that could change. It could be weather. Your business could be very weather dependent, and a change in weather will really impact sales. So you have to continually analyze and have a look at what the critical assumptions are and sort of plan around any changes in those, whether they be unforeseen or not. Now, some of those strategy areas are very straightforward and obvious, whereas some require a bit more explanation. So I am going to go on to those. Just keep in mind that all of this and all of these key strategy areas that I mentioned would make up a good marketing strategy document. There's some fantastic templates available online for marketing strategies. There's one that I like to use, which is from a government site. So if you do want that, please just drop a line into the chat or the Q&A, or even reach out after the webinar, because I can certainly send a link to that through to all attendees of today's webinar. Okay, so now we're going to expand on target market. Target market is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And if you've listened to any of my webinars or attended any of my workshops in the past, it's something that I am quite caught up on. I do believe it's the most important component of marketing, truly knowing your target market. So what a target market is it's a segment that has been selected by your business for marketing attention, not to be confused with who you already get through your doors, because there can be a difference between the two. Now, through research, you should define who your target market is or who your target market could be. You might find that there are some target segments that no one is reaching or communicating to. There may be target markets that are being served by your competitors, but perhaps your competitors aren't doing a great job. Or there might be other target markets that are saturated with options, so therefore they're a little bit more difficult to get to. But in terms of being a viable market segment, you first have to look at some key criteria. Now, the four sort of criteria that we consider are the individuals or the businesses, depending on who your customers are. In terms of a segment or segmentation, the segment should be homogenous, so they should all be alike. And the second criteria is that they have to differ from each other, so other market segments, but also differ from the general population. The third is that they have to be large enough to financially support their own marketing campaign. So you might have a market segment that comes through your doors, you're going to get that business anyway, but you don't actually want to support it, or they're not financially viable or big enough to support their own marketing campaign. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to serve them when they come through your doors, or they're not going to be your customers. It just means that you're not going to focus your marketing attention on them. So you could have some market segments that meet the first two criteria, but they're just too small for you to put any advertising spend towards, which is absolutely fine. The last criteria, which isn't overly relevant in Australia, but is that your market segment has to be reachable through some type of media or marketing communications method. Now, there are some market segments that are more difficult to reach, and your actual decision maker may differ from the end user. So it's also really important to determine who is the decision maker in terms of who's going to purchase your product or service. Now, a good example of this is with children. A lot of the time, their parents are the decision makers, even though the child is the end user of a product or service. So your marketing messages and your target market is going to be perhaps the mother or the father or the parents of that particular child. So and really always consider who the actual decision maker is. Now, this becomes a little bit more tricky in a B2B sense, so business to business, where you've got a large organization, could be your target market, or that business could be your target market, but the decision maker, is it the CEO? Is it the executive assistant? Is it the receptionist in terms of, that organizational structure? Who is it that makes the actual decision to contract or to book or to purchase a product from your business? Now, in terms of segmentation, that is really dividing customers into groups with common characteristics, as I mentioned. Now, they can be segmented or divided along a number of different dimensions. The most common is demographics, because it tends to be the easiest. But other methods include psychographics, generations, their geographic location, or benefits and usage. So I would absolutely look at all factors. It's not enough to just go, all right, my target market is New South Wales, people from New South Wales. It's not everybody from New South Wales. It has to be further defined. So it will be then, what gender are they? What age bracket are they? What sort of beliefs do they have? What values do they have? What buying behavior do they have? So you really drill down into a lot more comprehensive detail. If you don't have that clear image of your target market, as a small business, you try to reach everybody. And what happens is you end up appealing to almost nobody, because your messages are too broad and untargeted. So in terms of your target segments, it's fine to have multiple target markets, but you have to clearly define exactly who that person is across a number of characteristics. You should be able to even visualize that person. Once you know absolutely everything about them, you know exactly where they consume media, what appeals to them, and therefore you know what you're communicating and where you're communicating it. So it takes all of the guesswork out of it, and no advertising money should be wasted, because you're placing your advertising to the right person at the right place, at the right time, with the correct message as well. Okay, then the marketing mix. So marketing mix is basically controllable factors that have been chosen to satisfy customer needs. So there are 4 controllable factors, which or the main 4 controllable factors are your products, your price, your place, and your promotion. Now, there is an extension on that to 7 Ps if you include people, processes, and physical environment. So think about your business and how what your business is, what industry you're in. Do the 4 Ps are the 4 Ps relevant, or is it in fact the 7 Ps? At the bare minimum, I would consider the 4 Ps. So to expand on that, products. Does your product range work together? Does it complement each other? Does it suit who you've identified as your target market? Or do you need to make any changes to appeal more to your target market? You have to consider that your target market is not going to change their needs and wants to suit your product. You're always going to have to redefine, reevaluate, and perhaps change your product or service to meet the needs of your target market. This is a really key thing. A lot of businesses go, all right, well, we've developed this product and service that's been working forever. Why change it? But you have to look at the continual changes of customers. Their expectations, their needs, their wants will all evolve over time, and you have to make sure that your product and service is meeting the needs continually. Then you've got pricing. Looking at your pricing, does your pricing suit your target market? Knowing everything that you know about them, does the pricing in fact work for them? How does it look against your competitors through your competitor analysis? Also have a look at how each price in your product or service range looks alongside each other. It doesn't make sense. So do you have one product that's significantly more than the other product, but the customer can't really differentiate what the difference is between the two? So you really have to make sure that your pricing makes sense from a consumer decision perspective. If they're sitting down looking at your range of products or services, is it clear, and is there an easy, or is there, do they have the ability to clearly and easily make a decision? Also, you have to consider if your pricing allows for enough profit. So there's no point being in business if you're not profitable. So really having a look and drilling down to each product or service and understanding what is more profitable, what you want to focus on and sell more of versus what you perhaps want to reduce and sell less of. Then your place is your distribution. So where do buyers look for your product or service? Is it online? Is it through direct sales? Do you have a wholesale sort of situation? Thinking about this, how can you access the right distribution channels? If you do wholesale your products or services, you'll have to then go back to your pricing strategy and make sure that you've incorporated that into your strategy as well. Promotion is the last element. Now, what is your strategy around promoting your product or service? Where will you market it? How are you going to get to your market if you're attracting consumers directly? Where specifically do they consume media or advertising? And what type of methods of communications and advertising are actually going to appeal to them? Now, because you've done such thorough research on your target market, you'll have the answers to all of these questions. So your promotional strategy is really just stating what you've learned about your target market and why and how you're going to be promoting based on all of that information that you know about them. You have to know your target audience very, very well to be able to determine where and how you're going to promote your product or service. You're taking the guesswork out of it and you're basing it on actual facts and results. Okay, so that would be a marketing strategy, or the core elements of a marketing strategy. And that was an absolute fly through of the development of a strategy. It really takes time and patience while you research. We could talk about strategy all day. And in fact, I have in the past run a full day workshop on marketing strategy. So don't take that lightly. It is an in-depth process. But the key point here was really to understand that you can be very targeted and spend your funds, particularly if funds are limited, very, very well with a solid strategy behind you. So I would really encourage you to work on your marketing strategy as a priority. And the key reasons are that it really composes that big picture through pinpointing your specific target markets, through determining their needs and wants through market research. So even if it's something that you think you know, back it up with that research. It also assists with that analysis of your competitive advantages, and that allows you to build a marketing strategy around what it is that makes your business differ or stand out from competitors, and allows you to create a marketing mix that then promotes the value of what your customers' needs and wants are. So you're talking directly to the right people about the right things. Now, a key consideration here are that your strategic planning has to match your resources and capabilities, and that's really to ensure long-term growth. So don't go and build a strategy around, $1 million marketing budget if you don't have the capabilities to spend those kind of financial resources, or if you don't have the staff to actually carry out some of those tasks. Also, you have to factor in all components to get the true big picture. If you were to just analyze competitors but not look at target markets, or vice versa, or leave out any elements of what I've mentioned, you're not going to get that true big picture. Another thing that I will say is that I truly believe that strategic planning is an integrating, or should be an integrated activity. If you involve many areas of your business, you're going to get a lot more information and a more broad sort of view of the big picture. You might be very much focused on the operational side of things and not know what's going on in the sales and the front of house, or vice versa. So you may miss something. I would recommend involving as many people in your team as possible, or at least a selection of team members, to talk about marketing. Have an annual marketing review, a marketing planning strategy day, those kind of things where people can provide feedback. Think of things like your SWOT. Some of your employees will have some key information on what they think your strengths and weaknesses are, or even ideas on what opportunities or threats there perhaps may be to your business, just as one example. So the more feedback you can get, the more ideas you can get from your staff and people involved in your business, the better the view, or the more holistic the view is going to be. I think that's the most important element of marketing on a shoestring budget. If you know exactly who you're talking to, what products they want, where they consume media, which is where you should advertise, then no marketing dollar should be wasted. So do consider a strategy to be at the core of marketing on a shoestring budget. Now we're going to look at some marketing tactics. Now, most of this is focused online. And the reason being is that online allows you to reach a lot of people, be very, very targeted, and measure absolutely everything that you do. So there are offline things that you can do, and I'll have a run through some of the marketing activities that I think can really be considered in terms of marketing on a shoestring budget. Once you've done the research, you know your specific audience, you're targeting your advertising towards this audience and where they consume media. Some of those essential low-cost activities should include, obviously, your online setup. Do an audit of your online assets and make sure that it's all solid. Your website, your SEO, look at remarketing at a minimum. Seek referrals and reviews online, and make sure that you're listening to those reviews. You can set up alerts to get notified anytime someone leaves a review, and make sure that you respond to those reviews. Now, that could be by way of Google, Facebook. There could be industry-specific review sites like your Urban Spoon or TripAdvisor, and those kind of ones, really depending on your industry. The second point is to personalize marketing. So whether that's email, social media, no matter what you're doing, talk to your audience specifically, because you know exactly who it is that are your core target market. Talk about relevant events, relevant things going on at relevant times of year. I would also look at obtaining an email database so that you can talk more specifically to those people. It's not always appropriate or applicable in a business to get an email database, but if you are taking online sales, if you're a service-based industry and you're taking bookings of any sort, it is quite common to get people's name, email address, those kind of things. Once you start developing that database, you should then be communicating to them and giving them products and offers that are tailored to them based on everything you know about their purchase history. I would also look at creating new customer offers. Once you get them in, they cost very little to keep, subject to you offering fantastic customer service. So do find a way to get them in, and then stay in touch with those clients. Keep them in that cycle where you do obtain a database of some sort. You do continue to communicate with them on social media, and we will talk about social media a little bit soon. Really keep them in that cycle. I would also say that you have to nail your value proposition, so your unique selling proposition, your USP. Focus on developing content that highlights what that USP is, and then storytell through your content. So keep telling the story of why you're the expert in that field, why you are truly unique and with that particular area or that particular point that is your USP. The next one is PR. I would say be your own PR advocate. We actually do a media and PR webinar that gives you some really inside info and a step-by-step DIY sort of approach to media and PR, where you can get free publicity and really engage with the media. As small businesses, we quite often have a really amazing story, and you'd be surprised at who would be interested in that story. You just have to get the pitch right and have the confidence and the know-how to really approach the media. Sponsorship opportunities can be a great way to market on a shoestring budget. There could be charitable events or other sponsorship opportunities that sometimes it's an in-kind sort of offer in exchange for advertising or marketing. You have to make sure that the target market of the event, whether that be, you know, any kind of sponsorship event, perfectly matches your target market. And if they do, that can be a really good PR opportunity as well as an advertising opportunity. So I'd really assess any sponsorship offers and have a look and make sure that when there's an alignment with target markets, have a look at what the actual level of communication is versus what you need to input. Sometimes it could be cash or products or services, but there could be some good opportunities there. My last point here is don't forget about grassroots marketing, things like signs, handouts, billboards on your own, whether it be car or venue. That kind of stuff does get overlooked. People sometimes only focus on online and forget the basics. So do consider the grassroots stuff. I would also say don't forget traditional marketing. It can be more expensive, it can be harder to track and to monitor results, but there could be some good traditional marketing opportunities. So never say never, but just really understand who your target market is and whether or not that particular traditional marketing avenue does appeal to your specific target market. So we're going to go on now and explore some of the key online marketing tactics, I should say, and how best to market your business online, because I do believe that every business, no matter what your industry is, should be online. And you can really maximize your online presence to get new business and to really capitalize on every marketing dollar spent. Now, your advertising online can be extremely targeted, and of course it's very trackable, so that then takes out the guesswork as to whether what you're doing is actually working. Now, one thing I will say as a bit of a disclaimer before we go on to some of these online tactics is that we are going to touch on, over the next 20 minutes, some really interesting and core areas of online marketing. But there is further information by way of webinars to expand on each and every item that we go through. So do seek that out. For example, you know, we've got about 3 or 4 different webinars on SEO alone. We're going to touch on it in a couple of minutes. So really do have a look at what you're doing within your business. Consider all of the elements that I'm going to run through, but seek out further information where it's relevant to you. All right, we're going to start with your website, because your website is at the core of your online marketing. I would keep in mind that your website's only part of the strategy. Potential customers need to be able to find your site, and you also need to be able to actively engage with current and future customers online. But your website really is your 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week salesperson. It's where customers might find out about your products or services. They may be able to make purchases. Even if you've got a physical store, for example, people may be able to also transact online. The people may come to your website just purely to find out where you are and get to your location. So considering that your website is your 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week salesperson, ask yourself, have a look at it now, whether it be on desktop or on your device. Is your website doing your business justice? Is it selling your product or service as it should? Now, there are some key design elements to consider. The first is your images. Make sure that your website has large hero images, I should say, that really highlight and tell the story of your product. Obviously, those images have to feature your core target market. And I do see a disconnect sometimes where Small businesses don't get their own professional photography. So the photography on a website could be stock images, or it could be low resolution images, or images that really don't sell your product or service as it should. I would really encourage investing in photography because this is a place where people go to make a decision on whether or not they want to engage with you any further. Your navigation is really important, and it's important that it's easy. Test it with friends and family, get them to try and do something on your site, whether it's to find your location or buy something, and watch how easily or not they go through that navigation process. Now, simple navigation in an F pattern, so left to right and top to bottom, is really the recommendation. But understanding your core target market will help you determine exactly the usability of different navigations. Your website should feature strong calls to action. So you shop now, buy now, contact us, find out more. Those kind of indicators are really important. Now, people may go through a fairly thorough research process throughout your website. You need to be able to get them to transact on some level at any point in your site. So even if they're on your About Us page, is there a button that they can just push to get your phone number or to find out more, whatever it is that you want that person to do on your site? Fully responsive is really important. Now, fully responsive is like what you see on the screen there, that example where you've got a website that adapts its shape and size and its menu structure based on the device that it appears on. So whether it's desktop, tablet, or mobile, and a range of different sizing, it will continually adapt. Now, that's obviously really good for SEO, but it's really important for the user as well. You don't want them going to a full site on their mobile where they can't really take the actions that they need to because it's not responsive. There should be plenty of content throughout your site, and the content should be good quality. Customers should be able to get enough info about your business, and that content should really flow. It will also really help how well you rank with Google and other search engines. Google needs content on your website to understand what that website is all about. So imagery is crucial to sell your product or service, but content remains that fundamental item to ensure the success of your results on search engines like Google. Now, keep in mind that everything about your website should be speaking to and aimed at your target market. So the design, the colors, the fonts, the technology, the functionality, it's all about who you're aiming your marketing towards. So go back, really define that target market first, and then consider all of these elements on your website. Now, having a great website is one thing, but people have to be able to find that site, and that's where SEO comes into it. So I've used the term SEO a couple of times, but you may not know what it is. SEO is an acronym for search engine optimization, but in very simple terms, it's the process of improving your site to increase its visibility on relevant searches. Now, for SEO to be effective or even to worth your while, keyword research is a really important factor. Now, we have an entire webinar on keyword research. It's that important, but you need to do keyword research before you do any SEO or make any changes to your website. Keyword research is the process of proving what search volumes there are for specific terms. So you might think that people search a particular term to get to your website. But how you think about your business versus how consumers behave could be different. So keyword research will allow you to have a bit of a brainstorm around all the terms that you think people might use to get to your site, then prove the actual search volumes. Keyword research is really interesting. Like I said, entire webinar on it because it's that in depth. But once you get the hang of it and start doing the research, it's something you can very much do at home by yourself. You don't need a professional to do that, but get the tips, hints, and the tools to be able to do it yourself. Prove the search volumes are there for the specific terms. And then the next step is to improve your website so that it ranks well for those key search terms in search engines like Google. Now, good SEO is a combination of the hundreds of different tactical efforts. It does continually change and evolve. So things that you may have done, in the past few years that resulted in top rankings may not be as significant now. So it is important that you continuously fine-tune your SEO. It does take time. So if you make changes now, it might be a few weeks to a month before you start to see any results at all. And because it's continually changing, you need to make sure that you're on top of any algorithm changes or anything that's changing in the SEO world, and then modify your SEO accordingly. Now, SEO includes two elements: on-page and off-page SEO. Now, on-page is everything that happens on your website that improves its rankings, and off-page SEO is everything that happens away from your website that directs people to your site. So a few key areas of on-page SEO are things like your URLs. They should be readable rather than using codes. It should be straightforward, like yourwebsite.com/about us, for example, not a coded URL. Internal links between pages on your site is really important. For example, your homepage may talk about your range of products or service. As you mention that product or service, link to the page that that product or service sits on. It makes it very easy for the consumer. We don't have to then, let's say we're reading about it, we don't then have to go up to the menu, find the page, click it. We can just click right on there and then and go straight to that page. So whatever's good for the customer or the client or the consumer generally improves your ranking from an SEO perspective as well. 301 redirects. That's just basically redirecting pages that you no longer are using. For example, you might take down a page. You don't want people to accidentally go to that page through search engine results or through, an old link that they had in an email or something. So you always redivert them to different pages on your website. Page load times are really important. Make sure you keep an eye on the speed of how quickly your pages load. Image sizes can impact that, as well as a range of other factors. You can test that regularly with Google developer tools that are free again. So keep an eye on that kind of thing. There's also page title tags, meta descriptions, alt tags, and heading tags, but I'm going to expand on those items because they're starting to get a little bit more technical and a bit more in depth. Okay, so title tags. Each of the pages of your website should have its own unique title tag. Now, this will include the main keywords for that page. So it's not the headline that's displayed on a page. It is only visible in code view, but Google and other search engines will use it to display as the main title in their search results. So, for example, what you see here in the red box. The optimal length is about 60 characters. So that's long enough to display a good title without it getting cut off. Don't use stop words like the, is, and, those kind of things. The preferred format is to put your primary keywords first and then subsequent keywords for that page. Now, aside from being a critical factor for Google, good page title tags will really influence users, because the more appealing that is, the more likely they are to click through to your website, which is the ultimate goal. Then you've got meta descriptions. So meta descriptions are the second part that you see in red on your screen now. It's not visible in any part of your site except in the actual HTML code. So this is that little description that's underneath your title in search results. It doesn't affect your ranking in search engines, but it is like a mini ad for your web page, and it's free. So you really want to use this space to get people to click through to your site. Now, if you don't specify a meta description, Google and other search engines will do it for you. And the way they do it is to take a little sample from the text of your the particular page on your website. Sometimes they could be cut off, not really relevant to your keywords, or not really what you'd want people to see as that small snippet of opportunity that you've got to get them over to your site. So this is only about 160 characters to make sure that the text doesn't cut off. Don't use the same meta description for every page on your website. Each page should have its own unique meta description. Then we've got alt tags and heading tags. So on the left, you see alt tags, and this is tags that are used for images, so HTML tags to describe what an image is. Search engines can't see an image, so without a description, they don't know what it is or if it's relevant to any key search terms. So if Google web bots can read what an image is about, then it obviously helps the SEO of that particular page, or your images could be displayed in a Google Images search. So it is a good idea to include local keywords or the title of that page with the keywords that you're trying to rank for, as well as a bit of info on the actual image. Then you've got heading tags on the right-hand side. Heading tags are really important to SEO. because they help, or important for SEO, I should say, because they help both the reader of your content, but also Google web bots to determine what the content is on your page and how important it is. So as a user of a website, we glance over a page and the headings are really important to draw our eyes to specific topics. Search engines then use heading tags as indicators of context. So what is on the page and how does it relate to what the user is searching for? So these heading tags all carry different weights. H1 is the most important. Now, the way I like to think about it is H1 should be your main page heading, so what the entire page is about. And then subsequent H tags will be what the particular sections or paragraphs are about. You might have a heading on your page, but it's not tagged correctly in the back end, which means it's not sending that weighted message to search engines like Google. All right, so that's a fly through of on-page SEO. Then you've got off-page SEO or off-site SEO. Now, these are any actions that are taken outside of your website that will impact your rankings within search engine results pages. Generally speaking, off-page SEO makes up the majority of an SEO strategy because it really helps build the credibility of your website. You want your website to rank above others that have similar messages. And to achieve that, you have to build your website's authority. A few ways that you can do that. Link building, first of all. Now, that's the process of getting external pages to link to a page on your website. Now, building links can be complicated. It can be time consuming because not all links are created equal either. So you might have a link from a more authoritative website, and that's going to have a much greater impact on your search engine results page or on your SEO than a link from a newly built or a low quality site. Now, Google bots will count all the links coming up to your website, but like I said, they're not all created equal. They're going to give more weight to quality links and rank accordingly. So just to put that in perspective, if your site had 100 poor quality links, but your competitor had 15 good quality links, then the chances are that your competitor is going to rank higher than you. Also, keep in mind, Google has become very good at spotting a scam. So you actually get penalized for that kind of scammy link building. You used to be able to do all kinds of things in the past, but now you have to focus on good quality links. So that link has to come from a trusted and a reputable site or a site that's related to your type of business. Generally speaking, a good quality link is difficult to come by. So some kind of human intervention may be required. So a membership, a business listing, those kind of things, a business relationship even will generally result in some kind of link, and it will be higher quality. Normally you would have a link from a page or to a page, that has content that's being related to to the content that it's being linked to. So don't just always link back to your homepage. If there's a specific topic or a link that's going to a specific page, it's going to be a better link. Normally, if you think about where the link is placed on the other end, on the website, it should be somewhere or something that's likely to be clicked by the reader. So it should be adding value there. Now, you might earn backlinks through, the content that you're producing. You might build backlinks through networking, relationship building, or suppliers that you work with, other businesses that you work with. You might create inbound links through adding your business to business directories and that kind of thing. There's a number of ways to get links, but that is a major factor in SEO. You've then got social media. So social media does send signals to Google in terms of the number of likes, comments, shares. It really does send a strong SEO message to Google and really assists with your SEO. As with many of the topics that we're mentioning today, we've got extensive information on social media and how you can really work your social media to make sure that you're getting that true engagement that is going to send signals to search engines like Google and really improve your SEO. Also, brand mentions. Brand mentions can be great. You might have a blogger come and experience your product or service and they mention your brand on their blog. Obviously, if you can get a link from that blog through to your website, it's going to be great, but unlinked brand mentions do help as well. But if you do come across any unlinked brand mentions, always try and get a link wherever possible. Influencer marketing can be great for off-page SEO as well. And again, we do have a webinar that sort of touches on social media and influencer marketing to assist with that side of it. Okay, so SEO is ranking organically when people search, but then there's SEM, which is search engine marketing. That's where you can set up advertising, and essentially it's pay per click in most cases. So we're not going to talk about pay per click advertising or Google AdWords as such today, but I am going to tell you about one form of Google AdWords, which is remarketing. Now, done correctly, remarketing can be great for increasing brand awareness and influencing conversions, and it can be very low cost. So it's a very simple concept, and you can kind of see from the image on your screen, but you're basically reinforcing your brand to people who have already visited your website. So they can come to your website through any means. It could be like social media. It could be because they saw your car with the branding on the side. It could be anything. They come to your site, Google tracks them. Then when they leave your site, your ads then have the opportunity to appear as banners or pop-ups on other sites that they browse. So you will most definitely have been a recipient of remarketing at some stage. You may have noticed it, you may have not, but there is the opportunity for you to implement remarketing. So if you're not doing any other SEM, absolutely consider remarketing as a minimum. I think it's a great and low cost. Like I said, it doesn't tend to cost much. You only pay once that prospect clicks your ad, and therefore they go back to your website. So they've already had some interaction with your business at some level. So they have that awareness. It's not new to them. So generally speaking, when they do click to go back, it's to perform something more by way of further research or actually transacting. And that's why it can be low cost and high value. Okay, so that is some of the key tactics that you can implement or that you can consider learning more in terms of further learning through our webinars or other webinars and workshops. But a really critical part of any marketing and marketing effectively is controlling and measuring. Essentially, prior to implementing any marketing, you have to think about how you're going to measure it. Once you have determined that, you should make sure that you evaluate all marketing activities. Defining that measurement before makes it very easy to then evaluate. Now, that could be clicks to your website. It could be completion of contact forms, of actual transactions online. There, you might have other offers, online deals, codes, that kind of thing, but some kind of measurement should be recorded so that you should know exactly how your marketing is doing. Then you would compare your goals and results and identify any deviations and identify the causes of those deviations. Now, depending whether it's positive or negative, you might need to formulate new plans and actions to correct any problems. But on the flip side, if things are going really well, you might want to exploit opportunities. So let's say you do implement an online advertising campaign, click budget of X amount, and it's doing really well, resulting in sales, things are going through the roof. You might want to add more budget to that to really exploit that opportunity. But with any marketing, particularly online, stay disciplined, follow your price and your quantity objectives. But if conditions do change, you will have to adapt the marketing plan to fit any changing conditions. Now, these can be a range of things, some of them within your control, some beyond your control. So, for instance, bad weather, there could be lockdowns, hopefully not anymore, but there could be things that have changed that you will need to adjust your marketing, revise the quantity objectives in sales, and if you're not achieving those sales targets, make notes so that you can learn from that, or that, next year when you have a look at a campaign, you go, look, we stopped our spending mid-month, what happened? You've got those notes to fall back on as to what happened around the conditions. Now, I truly believe that the best marketing plan is one that's reviewed often, and when you do learn those lessons from one year, you carry them over to the next. And I think the best way to do that is to look at reporting. So my preference is to do monthly reporting where I look at a range of different metrics So just to run through what I actually measure and what I'd recommend you measure, at a minimum, I would set up the monthly reporting that looks at your sales and leads. So what are your total sales? What are those sales that are specific to products and services? Do you have your marketing costs measured? So your marketing spend or costs associated with that lead acquisition, the conversion rates on how many leads did you get versus how many sales did you make? So you might look at web stats, so users, unique users, which is how many people came to your site. You might look at sessions, which is how many times those people came onto your website. Average page views tells you how engaged they are. If people are just on average looking at 2 pages, they're not really engaged in your website. So having a look, what is your average? Do people normally look at 2 to 3 pages, and just maintaining that average? You can set up goals and conversions online as well. So people take specific actions like completing a contact form or transacting. So having a look at achieving those specific goals. And referral traffic is really important. This will help you measure backlinks and what sort of backlinks are actually working. So you might be surprised. There might be people that have linked to your website that you weren't even aware of. So always look at that referral traffic. Then you've got your social media stats. You can have a look at how many posts you develop, but I would always be looking at engagement per post, and that's the golden statistic. That's really how many likes, comments, shares, so how many people and how much engagement did you get around each specific post. Again, so we've got so many webinars on social media and content and getting that engagement, but I would always measure how that engagement is going. When you identify posts that get more engagement, then that kind of tells you what your customers want to see or what your social media followers want to see. And you can really start to exploit those kind of posts and opportunities and reduce the ones that aren't doing so well by way of engagement. All right. Right on time. That wraps up the session on strategic marketing on a shoestring budget. I hope that it's given you some insight and some info into what you can and should be implementing within your business. Like I said, we've got a range of workshops and webinars that will really expand on some of those core areas that I've mentioned. There is a lot of information that I've just given to you today, so do keep that in mind. Don't feel overwhelmed by it. Just work out what you may not be doing at the moment and try and get some of those online things activated so that you can be getting a little bit more reach. Now, if you do want to meet with any of our advisors or learn any more, today's webinar was brought to you by as part of the Digital Solutions Commonwealth Government Program. Through this program, you can get 7 hours of personalised mentorship that incorporates 3 hours of one-on-one with an advisor for just $44. So if you haven't already considered this program, it is a wonderful government initiative that you should absolutely consider. It only runs through to September, and there are some eligibility requirements around it. You have to be or have a registered ABN in WA, Queensland or NT to do this through us. You have to be operating for profit and employ fewer than 20 full-time staff. So if that's you and you do want to reach out and learn more, please consider the program. There's a link on your screen. Thanks again for joining me today. I'm going to stay online and answer any questions that you might have. So please shoot them through by chat or Q&A. But if I don't hear from you, have a great day and hopefully we speak again soon.